Hello, everybody. This is Graham and Micah with Brother Telepathy Football. Here we are today with our next video. This one going to be switching up a tiny bit, doing a mock draft. But in this one, as you guys usually know, we do predictive mocks. In this one, we're going to be doing what we would do if we were GM of each of the 32 NFL teams here. So we're going to go through a mock draft on this one here. I wore my hat. Micah said he put on his GM hat for this one.
We're wearing our GM caps today, baby. We're switching it up.
Yeah, I like it. So we're going to get going here. I will kick us off with the first pick here. Micah already put it in the card for me. I appreciate it.
I knew you weren't going any other way.
Yes, no. We have obviously going Cam Ward here with the first overall pick. So this is what we think is going to happen. This is what I would do for sure in this situation. It's kind of funny. I was telling you off camera how I was just so on team trade back, for a while. And then after actually scouting Cam Ward, he's clearly the guy in my opinion. Obviously the NFL is feeling the same way. There are a lot of teams who are trying to get up to that number one spot. This is what we would do, though. What I would do in this situation, go Cam Ward, change the culture in Tennessee, put him on the map. Let's go from here.
Get your future while it's there, yeah. And it's especially with the moves that we've seen the Titans making, backup quarterback, teams have tried to move up, Titans have not budged. So this one is going to be Cam Ward on draft night. I won some money by taking him at minus 240, so I want me some money there. But
I was just going to say Brandon Allen, Tim Boyle. That has been the two quarterback moves that the Titans have done so far. So you tell me if they're going into the season with Will Levis, Tim Boyle, and Brandon Allen under center. We'll let everybody else go from there. But this is what I would do. But either way, it ends up being the same in this situation. So.
Yeah, and a lot of this mock draft is going to be based on our big boards because if this is what we would do, ultimately that's going to align with how our big boards fell. So for that reason, for this pick. I say that, but I completely flipped the script because Travis Hunter is my number one player on my big board. But if I'm the Browns, I'm taking Abdul Carter. I think that if I'm the Browns and I have the opportunity to pair up Abdul Carter along with Myles Garrett there, who's obviously just secured himself with some big money, that's your pass rush duo for the next 5 years. So I don't see why not get Myles Garrett some help. It's obviously going to help Abdul Carter in the long run. I just don't want to pass up the opportunity to have two nightmare edge players. So Brown's going Abdul.
No, I would do the same thing. Good call out, too, with the big board. We're going to be going off of our big board here, so a little bit of insight into the updates we've made on that end of things. But, I think you make an interesting point. Ideally, you want to draft best player available for all these teams, but there are some teams who aren't as much of in position to do that. You talk about any of these teams up here, like the Panthers, for instance, need defense pretty assured, almost for certain. And then you compare that to, your Vikings, for instance, can't afford to go best player available. So, sometimes it could be a combination. Ideally, that's where you marry the two, but it doesn't always work out that way. So good call out. Here for the Giants, this is easy for me too. We're going to go Travis Hunter at this spot here. I think that receiving duo would be obviously insane. You got Malik Neighbors, you got Travis Hunter. I think that would be an awesome pairing together. Giants have improved their secondary, so would maybe look to have Travis Hunter play that side of the ball. But in this situation, again, as GM of the Giants, I'm taking Travis Hunter to be a receiver in this situation here. Just talk about a loaded 1-2 punch with Neighbors and Travis Hunter. I think that'd be special.
Yeah, and this is it seems like we've had the board fall this way multiple times. Ultimately, I would have done the same three. I'm sure you would have done the same three. And then ultimately on draft night, I think this is how the top three falls.
Sure. Yep.
Notably there, Travis Hunter at 3 and then passing on quarterback. Anyways, with pick 4 here, big board for me says Mason Graham. But I'm a big believer in protecting your asset, and Drake May being the asset on the team. It only makes sense to protect him. I'm going to go Josh Simmons for me is my OT1. Membo I have profiled as a tackle. Will Campbell I have profiled as a tackle. I'm going to go Membo. I'm going to go Membo. A little bit of inside-outside versatility, as is with most of these offensive linemen. I think Membo is the most polished. He's a little bit undersized at 6'3", but the arm length kind of makes up for it. And he just seems like the best fit there. This is also the odds-on favorite, so I think this is how the top 4 shakes out on draft night, and I'm going to go Membo.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you too. So far, we've been on the same page. I'd go Membo here as well. Let's get some tackle help there. Here with the Jacksonville Jaguars, as I mentioned, I think secondary is a need for them. But again, as GM, next couple players on my board are edge rushers, but in there is Mason Graham, and we know they want to improve the interior of their D line. They already have a good edge duo there, so let's go Mason Graham here to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think this would be a good, safe pick, a guy that's going to start for them for a while and be a force on the inside.
Yeah, and it seems like that's going to be the likely option. Pick 6 here. If I am the Las Vegas Raiders, where do I go? There's a few different directions. I've always loved the idea of Tet going here. He is not my wide receiver 1 anymore. I've made some changes on my big board. I'm sure we'll come out with a video at some point updating the big board before the draft. But my current wide receiver 1 is Luther Burden. I think it would be very interesting to see this pairing. Obviously, he does not go this high on draft night. At least we don't think at the moment. I have a lot of sports betting references, but I put some money on Luther Burden being the first guy taken. You know what? Just to win me some money, we're gonna go Luther Burden here. I'm gonna stick to the guns. He's my number 1 guy on my big board. They need receiver. It's a good pairing. Fight me in the comments. So I like Luther Burden there.
I like it. Yeah, I think Luther Burden would be much more in the for sure first round conversation if there weren't some of those off the field issues. Nothing like crazy it sounds like, but just like some effort, like diva type stuff we see with receivers occasionally. So who knows if there's a ton of validity there, but yeah, I could totally see that.
The 24 tape, the most recent tape, and the team around him, the system they run, none of it did him any favors. 23 tape is much better, much more impressive.
Yeah.
He's got some route running. He's got the hands. He's obviously got the wiggle after the catch. He's my top guy. So
Brady Cook, is that the quarterback? Brady Cook?
yeah.
Yeah. He I didn't realize this. He was battling a wrist injury all year too. So that didn't help him in terms of performance and again ultimately leading to Luther Burden further success. So yeah, I'm with you on that. All right, so looking at the New York Jets, so a few different ways to potentially go here. If we're looking at my big board, like I said, we've got some edge rushers that haven't gone off the board yet. I think they could maybe go there. Just why not keep bolstering that defense? I think maybe look to improve in the secondary. You got Sauce Gardner, maybe add, somebody there. Jahdae Barron is a guy that I like, and maybe he could play nickel for you potentially, but I'm not sure we're going to go that direction. We're going to go with a guy who, again, let's just keep adding to the defense. We're going to go Jalen Walker out of Georgia. He is currently my number 4 player on my big board, a guy that, again, has some position versatility. Again, let's keep adding to that already pretty stout defense and keep making a strength, things that we've talked about before. So that's where I would go if I was the Jets in this situation.
Yeah, I like that pick. And Jalen Walker is someone who's actually lower on my big board personally, but it seems like the consensus is pretty high, and you're obviously very high on Jalen Walker as well. Maybe I need to revisit the tape and give him another whirl. But Carolina Panthers here, it has to be defense. I know a lot of my friends have maybe thrown around offense. Obviously receiver's been an option here. I'm going to go with Walter Nolan. This is my number
We knew he was going top 10.
My
folks.
number 4
we knew he was
player.
gonna sneak in here.
My number 4 player on my big board, and this is not like me trying to be different. I know it might feel that way with going Luther Burden and Walter Nolan. I truly believe that these guys are difference makers, especially here at 8, Walter Nolan. I would not bat an eye if this pick was made or if he went this high. I would not be surprised. He's got Jalen Carter abilities, who ironically also went there at 8, I believe. Did he go 8 or 10?
Who was it? I'm sorry.
Jalen Carter. Or did he go 9? He slipped.
No, Jalen Carter went 10, I believe.
He went 10? Okay, he was somewhere in that range. Anyways, I also love the idea of pairing up defensive tackles and getting someone like Walter Nolan and someone like Derek Brown. You would solve all of the run-stopping problems that you had this past year. So Walter Nolan's the pick. Graham, where did he go?
You were correct. He was the 9th pick. My mistake.
Okay.
He was the 9th pick. So
in that same
call.
range, in that same range of talented defensive tackles. So Walter Nolan, my number 4 player on my entire big board, the number 4 player in the draft, goes at 8 here for me.
I think he's picking up a little bit of steam. Again, another guy with potential off-the-field issues. It's hard for us, like you and I, to really factor that in too much into our grading scale because we just don't know. So most of the time I think we're pretty cautious to add any like red flags from a character standpoint because we just simply it's speculation on our
Yeah.
end of things. So cool. All right, we are with the New Orleans Saints again, a team that has a lot of needs. Let's just inject some talent. Um, into the team, obviously, into any of the number of different rooms that they have. So I think again, this could go a few different ways. We are going to go ultimately here in the edge rushing department. The next guy on my board is Mike Green, actually, number 7 overall player on my big board. So a guy who's got dominant tape. Again, not the best competition. He's got a full bag. He's able to, we saw a couple spin moves. We saw some, obviously he's got the speed on his end. He showed some power blowing through Josh Connerly Jr. at the Senior Bowl. So I think this is a guy that still has a lot of talent. Maybe his character issues are way in the past, not like they're excusable, even if, whatever they are. But a guy I think that certainly has top 10 talent in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that I think edge is maybe more of a glaring need than the Saints are willing to admit. Cam Jordan's aging. I'm not super impressed with the talent in that room outside of him, who's, a 38 years old or however old he is. Close enough. I mean, he's a dinosaur at this point. But anyways, adding edge talent makes sense, and I think that's probably the direction I would go. I don't know if I would go Mike Green at this spot. I mean, going off the other options there, either Michael or Donovan. But Mike Green is also a strong option. So you can't go wrong with any of the edges at that spot. Pick number 10.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy.
As I bow my head in defeat because my division rivals take a top 5 player in the class, and I thought about him here. I'm still not. I know running backs have started to become more valued. I'm still not quite there yet to take like a top 6 player or a top 6 pick on a running back. Spend a top 6 pick on a running back, but I know that's the direction we're going, and this is going to be one of those picks that almost for sure happens on draft night if he falls that far.
I think it's a fair question. I think the only reason he would is because there just doesn't make a ton of sense on a lot of these other teams. You know, I think a sneaky spot that actually Daniel Jeremiah called out was the Patriots. I mean, again, I think they've got some more pressing issues, but you talk about a guy who also can help out Drake May in terms of running the ball, then that could be he could go that high. I think I'll tell you what, the talent that he has.
That would be a fun pick. That would be a fun team to root for with that backfield of Genty and Drake May. That would be so fun to watch. Patriots fans just have it good, man.
Yeah, I don't know if I see that. I think Membo, makes sense. And again, if Abdul Carter somehow falls or Travis Hunter falls, I think either of those guys for sure would be the pick at that point. But other than that, not a ton of teams that I think he would go to in the top 10. So on to San Francisco. At this point here, again, I like a few different players for them. Looking at my big board here, Jahdae Barron is number 13 on my big board. Will Campbell is actually number 17 on my big board, so a bit lower, but I do think guard help would be good for them. Could play tackle. He obviously measured out 33-inch arms at his pro day, which again was by a scout, not by LSU, personnel. So it is a accurate reading from that standpoint. It seemed like a lot of the combine readings were a bit short for all of the tackles, so that bodes well for Will Campbell. But in this situation here, man, you talk about a guy who I think certainly could go higher than this. I'm conflicted right now because I really want to pick Jahdae Barron here, but I think we are going to go Will Campbell just to improve the offensive line. I think it makes the most sense and probably what I would end up doing if I was the GM of the Niners. If I was John Lynch up there, I think I'd be doing that in this situation.
You got your draft cap on, so I like it. I think offensive line for them is all but penciled in. I think it makes the most sense with Trent Williams on the decline. It just makes the most sense to me, and obviously it's a position of need as well. So 2 birds with 1 stone there.
Another guy that you put here a lot, Josh Simmons, was definitely a contention, but I think Will Campbell maybe slightly higher floor just because, again, with the injury history with Josh Simmons, and again, there's a little bit more versatility from a position standpoint. So that's why I ultimately went Will Campbell.
Yeah, and I'm going to take Josh Simmons here soon. Not at this pick because I'm going to go Ted McMillan. I think a lot of people get, especially with the video that recently came out of him talking about how he doesn't care to watch film and it's not something that he prioritizes. I think people would really be baffled at how many professional athletes in their sport don't watch film or don't enjoy watching the sport that they play. Like, I don't think that's super uncommon for him to come out and say, like, I don't really care about watching film. I don't watch the NFL outside of my craft. Like, I don't think that's that crazy. And I think that fit wise, the Cowboys desperately need help. So getting any sort of running back, receiver, tight end option here makes a ton of sense. And Ted McMillan is going to be my top guy at this point and a good fit for the Cowboys.
Yeah, good call out. I mean, that did get somewhat of buzz online, but I think it's a lot of people have said this too, but it's like, this is a job for them. I mean,
Yeah.
how much do you enjoy doing your job? Those of you watching, like, it is a kid's game at the end of the day, and of course they're getting paid big money, so it's not an excuse by any means. But at the same time, if you think about it, there's not always a ton of enjoyment out of, you know, doing your job. I guess like what you do on a day-to-day basis, your
Right.
occupation. So, good call out here for the Miami Dolphins. Again, I think offensive line is certainly in contention. I'm going to actually go ahead and go Jahdae Barron here, though. He's the next guy on my board. I think DB is somewhat of a need for them for sure. Jalen Ramsey's getting up there. They let go of Javon Holland, so I think DB certainly is contention. Will Johnson, I think, could actually end up going here on draft night. But we're going to go Jahdae Barron. He's a little bit higher than Will Johnson on my board. And, again, position versatility.
Yeah, and I love the fit there. I think that that's actually maybe one of my favorite fits for Barron in that Dolphins secondary, kind of play that nickel role. Regardless, you did mention Will Johnson, who's my number 7 player on my big board. I am being stared down in the face by this pick. I think with the improvements they made, it's not like the top priority. Like, you can definitely make a strength, or I guess a newly turned strength. I won't say strength, newly turned improvement. Into a brother telepathy. Look at that. That happens way too often.
It does.
Let's see, Colts here. I don't. Tyler Warren's like Colston Loveland's actually overtaken Tyler Warren on my big board, by the way. Woo, woo, woo.
Yeah.
I could see it happening on draft night, but Jihad Campbell also very high on my big board. I'm gonna go Will Johnson. I'm not gonna think about it too much. This is the next best player for me. Let's just take Will Johnson, improve the secondary even more than it already is, get him across Charvarius Ward with that over-the-top help from Cam Bynum, both newly acquired in free agency. So it's a great pick if this were to happen.
I like that too. Still got Kenny Moore in there playing that kind of slot corner role for them. So I like Will Johnson. I think that would actually be a great pick. Haven't seen that mocked a ton, but I like that. It's a good pick. All right, on the Atlanta Falcons. In my mind, this is edge rusher all day for the Falcons. I know in our last mock you went Ted McMillan in the spot. I could definitely see it. In my mind, if I'm the Falcons GM, this is edge rusher, or potentially Jihad Campbell too. I've seen that as well. But Shamar Stewart is a guy who is in my top 10 on my big board. Hasn't gone yet. So this was very close to being Jihad Campbell. We are going to go Shamar Stewart with this spot. I think edge rusher defense makes a ton of sense for them. Keep building that up. Their defense was pretty good last year. Let's try to get it over the hump so they can actually, make it into the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I like that. And Shamar Stewart, obviously combine rising big boards quickly on my board, at least after revisiting his tape. But 16 here at the Cardinals. There's a lot. Cardinals are a very interesting team when it comes to drafting because I have no idea what they're going to do. I mean, there's not even a guess as to what they could possibly do. But good thing I'm the GM today, Graham. So
Let's go.
We're thinking Jihad Campbell as an early candidate here. I do love some Donovan Ezeraku. I've started to watch more of his tape. I'm starting to fall more in love with him the more I watch. We're gonna go Jihad Campbell. I think you knew it.
I knew it. Yeah. And you can go ahead and lock in the next one. I was going to go just take whoever you didn't take in that situation. So we are going to go Donovan Ezeraku here with the next pick for the Bengals. But you go ahead and talk about Jihad Campbell first, and then I'll pick it up.
No, I don't need to belabor it too much. He's just so freaky sideline to sideline. Like, his lateral quickness is too good for a linebacker. I think he can wear multiple hats. I know they might have been bit in the butt from the me and my names, dude. The tall safety that they had, who was like hybrid linebacker guy, hybrid safety.
Clemson guy.
Yeah.
Isaiah Simmons.
They might have got bit from the Isaiah Simmons bug. I know he was definitely more safety coming out than linebacker, but
They did take what's his face too, linebacker, a couple years ago too. Was it Zaven Collins or something like that?
Yeah,
Was that his name?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
He was like a late 20 or mid 20s pick for them too. He didn't work out either. So sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. They might have got bit in the butt from that, but regardless, I think Campbell's ability to go sideline to sideline and he can wear multiple hats on that defense is going to be fun, especially in that Gannon defense. We'll see what that looks like. But Ezereku,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I was going to say Jihad Campbell I think is a better prospect than, well, maybe at the time, there was a good bit of love for what's his face, Isaiah Simmons, because of his versatility. But end of the day, we'll move on to the Bengals. Trey Hendrickson still looks like he's going to potentially remain on the roster. I think obviously if he does get traded, this is more of a glaring need. But I think, again, just defense build up. Again, I was going to go either him or Jihad Campbell, whoever you didn't take. So, yeah, I think this is a pretty straightforward pick. Let's keep building up the D-line with Ezereku here.
Yeah, huge need for them. Defensive line is a big need for them. So we move anyways. Seahawks here, dude. This is exactly what it's going to be like on draft night because there's so many people who I feel like should have gone earlier who are still here. But that's literally what the draft is going to be come up, a month from today or whatever, or a little bit less than a month, I should say. I'll tell you my thoughts and you let me know what you're thinking. I want Simmons to go, but this isn't the tackle spot for him.
Right.
I think they feel fair about what they have. I also don't think they're an offensive line team in the first round.
Really?
So we'll pass on that.
You don't think interior O-line for the Seahawks here, first round?
I mean, I think they definitely need it. No, you know what? Screw that. I literally said that I don't think that's something they do. I've got my regular mock draft, but I forgot I'm wearing the hat today. This is my mock draft.
Yeah, this is what you would do. That's a good
You're
point.
right.
Yeah.
Which I've
But it
done
doesn't
for
have to
all
be.
these. No, you're right. No, I've done that with most of my picks. Is what I would personally do. But I'm still not going to go guard here. I think that they have different needs.
All I have to say.
All I have to say, I'm still going to pass on guard. Let me take a quick look just to make sure that that's not something I want to do.
I've slowly talked him into guard Seahawks.
Gosh
fans,
dang
so
it, Graham.
Don't worry.
Yeah. I think Booker is obviously the top guard on the board and obviously a position of need. So Booker feels like a spot or a person that should go here. I think edge. Let me look at the edges real quick. My memory is bad, so I gotta see all these names for me to remember. Micah Williams is very high on my board. He's still here. It's either one of these Georgia cats too. I'm looking at tight end could be a sneaky spot here.
Interesting. Yeah.
Ooh, I didn't really consider that, but I'm kind of, you know what? Given what they've done in the offseason with the departure, you know what? This is the pick the whole time. This was a long one, but this was the pick. Colston Loveland to Seattle. I'm telling you, with the moves they've made, JSN is the guy now. They don't have any compliment to him. And then Sam Darnold back there throwing the ball. You got to help out your newly acquired free agent. So, you know what? The more I think about this, I think Weapon is going to be here at 18, depending on obviously the players around. But we could see the first tight end off the board here. And Colston Loveland, I think, is a better, more vertical threat in this type of system. Given what we saw Sam Darnold do with the deep ball, I think Colston Loveland could be a fun pairing.
I actually love that pick. I'm so glad it took as long as it did to get there because I think that is a great pick.
It's
I
worth
love that.
it. Heck yeah.
Wasn't even thinking tight end, but at the same time, though, it makes so much sense with that system they're going to run there. And, like you said, you've got Cooper Kupp and you've got JSN. Matthew Golden probably would have been another in that same realm of type of receiver, archetype you could call it, I guess. So I like this pick a lot. That's interesting. So, all that being said, on to the Tampa Bay Bucks here. And again, a few different ways this could go. We're not going to go Matthew Golden, although I do like Matthew Golden a lot. I think it could make sense to add to the aging receiving core. It could happen. Let's see. Here's next up on my board. We are going to go Micah Williams. That's where I was going to go. Excuse me. Yeah, edge rusher out of Georgia, a guy that hasn't had a ton of production, but again, if you are somewhat familiar with what Georgia does, and this is kind of the same conversation with the A&M guys as well, just not a ton of production from a sack and pressure standpoint as much because they're just not asked as much to do that. Whereas some of these other teams, you put Mike Green on Marshall, Mike Green go get the quarterback, that type of thing. Georgia and Texas A&M, these guys are more supposed to set the edge. Again, not free reign, I guess you could say, to go sack the quarterback all the time. So I think Micah Williams has all the tools. He was injured all year last year. I think this could potentially be a steal for the Bucks at spot number 19.
Yeah, I like that. And then pick 20 here. Back-to-back tight end is looking me in the eyes. I know they brought in Noah Fant, and that is still to be determined what his role is. I know you've mentioned a few times that could be your joker there. You're kind of like your gadget-y guy. I don't really know what that looks like. I think that Sean Payton has still been missing his Jimmy Graham. I saw a highlight video the other day, and I sat down and watched a 12-minute highlight just because in the middle of my work shift. So I love the idea of going tight end here. Safety, Kenneth Grant has fallen way too far. Josh Simmons has fallen way too far. I mean, there are so many guys here who I'm looking at where I'm licking my chops if I'm a GM. Ultimately, I'm going to go Tyler Warren. I don't know what the Noah Fant role is, but I know that he doesn't prevent you from going the Mackey Award winner. So we're going to go tight end here. And Sean Payton gets his Jimmy Graham, and I guess Noah Fant can play whatever the hell Taysom Hill played.
Nice. All right, fair enough. Okay, I'm going between three guys for the Steelers right now, and it's not quarterback. For me, it's either Matthew Golden, receiver. It is, I don't know who to have. Malachi Starks, thank you, Micah, and Josh Simmons. These are three guys that I have in the realm of possibility for the Steelers here. I think you could go tackle. Josh Simmons, kind of a sneaky tackle spot. They did lose Dan Moore to free agency to the Titans, so maybe you could step into that spot there. I love Matthew Golden. This was originally, I think, in one of our very first mock drafts, this was the landing spot for Matthew Golden. I still think it'd be a good landing spot, even especially after the DK Metcalf acquisition. Then you have, him and George Pickens, kind of similar. Matthew Golden can play that Z for you. I think that would be really enticing for whoever plays quarterback, presumably Aaron Rodgers at this point. But, I think that would be awesome. And then Malachi Stark's just a really good player. Could slide in there to safety for them. We're going to take out Malachi Starks because I'm really liking the other two options. We are going to go Matthew Golden. I think that would be a great pairing. I like Matthew Golden a lot. A guy who's a great route runner, great hands, and obviously has the 4.29 speed to back it up. Even if he doesn't show it on tape all the time, it's got to be somewhat in the tank. If you run 4.29, you can't fake that much, right?
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, this is where I would go.
And if you bring in someone like Rodgers, especially given the Steelers, their ability to win games and finish over 500 when they shouldn't year after year, if you add Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Golden, DK Metcalf, George Pickens, along with the defense, is that team a threat in the AFC North? Is that team? Maybe not a threat because the division's so loaded, but that's a team that could cause problems late in the year for some team if this scenario happened and if Rodgers obviously becomes the guy. But interesting thought there, and I'm on board with it. I'm definitely on board with it. Chargers here. A few different.
I'm sick if I'm the Chargers. If I'm in your spot and Matthew Golden just went one spot ahead, I'm sick personally. But
you see these three guys go in a 4-pick span before you, and I think you're pretty upset.
Yeah, that's true.
Receiver here, gosh. I love Emeka Egbuka, but he feels too in line with what they already have. If Elick Ayomanor was slightly, which I guess I wouldn't be afraid to take him here. I just know what's going to happen if he goes here. I would consider it, but 22 does feel rich for him. He's in my top 50, and he's my number 5 receiver. I'm doing off the top of my head, trying to remember my big board here, but I'm way higher on Elick Ayomanor than most. But regardless, I don't think that receiver is the option, given the string of skill players we just saw, and Tet and Luther Burden being gone. Best player here for me is definitely Malachi Starks. I'm actually going to go Malachi Starks. He's fallen way too far. Asante Samuel Jr. This was maybe a spot where you kind of test and see what Malachi Starks can do versatility wise. Can you play him at outside corner? I know that's been a conversation, especially during the combine. I know I overheard what's his face talking about it. Some teams have maybe tested to see him what he could do at corner. Is he your nickel guy? Could he play safety? Doesn't matter. Let's take one of the best players in the draft at this spot. He's fallen way too far. Don't overthink it. And this is definitely one of those prospects where it's a don't overthink prospect. Like, let's just draft the guy.
Yeah, I like it. Packers are in somewhat of a tough spot here in my book because if I'm looking at my board here, Josh Simmons hasn't gone. This isn't a tackle spot, in my opinion. Amari Hampton is number 22 on my board. They don't go running back here. I don't have another corner for a good few spots, so I don't see corner. Maybe Nick Emenworry, potentially. He's kind of one of the next guys on my board here. I've got some interior offensive linemen. We're going to go here a guy who is 28th on my board, actually. We're going to go Derek Harmon out of Oregon. A guy who I think, again, you can't ever have too many guys on the defensive line. Defensive line, offensive line, those type of positions. So I think corner could be a potential spot, but just nobody that I'm in love with at this spot personally going off of my board. So, based on somewhat team needs, and then again, I do think Derek Harmon is a guy who should go first round. That's where I'm going to go with this pick ultimately.
I like it. And Derek Harmon could have been a spot that I know in the Vikings community, this is a pick. Derek Harmon to the Vikings is he's very popular in the Vikings community, I should say. So a little sad to see him go there, but I do see Kenneth Grant here who definitely has my attention. I'm between two players right now, Kenneth Grant and Mr. Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame. Benjamin Morrison's a top 20 player for me, and I know that's definitely high for what most people would consider. I'm just so impressed. He's, and I know I talked about it before, this is going to be a better pro than a better college player. No doubt in my mind. So I'm kind of deciding between those two guys, but I think what would I like more? I think I would like Kenneth Grant more if I was the Vikings GM. If I was Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, Micah Whittle, that's my full name, by the way. I'm taking Kenneth Grant here. Taking Kenneth Grant here, pick 24. So that's the guy. Definitely a sleeper in this draft. So we'll see where he goes in real life. That'll be an interesting landing spot.
You had to make the dumbest joke of the night the second I took a sip of this water. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Much appreciated. Okay, on to the Houston Texans. To me, this is easy interior offensive line. I think this is an okay spot for interior offensive line to go. In my opinion, I don't think Tyler Booker has gone yet. I would be comfortable with him, Gray Zabel, or Donovan Jackson in this situation, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah.
So going off my board, though, we are going to go Tyler Booker. He's my number 2 interior offensive lineman. I did slide Will Campbell over to interior offensive line, so technically he's my second interior offensive lineman. I love Donovan Jackson too. I think he's a great player. Gray Zabel obviously held up at the Senior Bowl. I would take any of those three guys at the spot if I was the Houston Texans.
Yeah, Donovan Jackson actually cracked my top 50 at the number 50 spot. So interesting tidbit there. But yeah, no, I think Booker's the right pick. Offensive line is way too big of a need for them to pass on. So best offensive lineman at the spot, I think it's definitely worth the pick.
I'm realizing now that I definitely could have gone Josh Simmons because I think tackle is obviously a need too. So maybe would have gone there, but
neither here nor there.
We'll stick with Tyler Booker. Again, still a good spot.
I mean, it just depends on what your preference is. If you prefer interior offensive line, you can take him. If you prefer tackle, you can take him. So
we'll go with this because it sounds like the Texans are wanting to reload their offensive line because of issues like the guys in the room maybe aren't bought in and things like that. And so,
you know what? Sorry to cut you off. They actually did sign Cam Robinson at tackle, so maybe that's enough. Maybe that's enough to sway you out of taking.
That's a good call too.
Which Cam Robinson?
Go ahead. Yeah. So go ahead.
No, I don't remember who the other tackle is. Who's the other tackle?
Tyus Howard, I think his name is.
Titus
right?
Howard. Yeah. Titus Howard. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So is it Titus or Tyus? It doesn't matter.
I think it's Tyus, but it doesn't matter. Howard.
They have tackle at least Howard. They have tackle relatively covered. Tyler Booker can go there, sure.
Yeah, no, but it's a good point. And then again, just because you cut me off with what I was saying,
sorry.
It sounds no, it's okay. It sounds like also they're wanting to reload that offensive line for like in the room. They're wanting like harder workers or just the mentality shift. And it sounds like if there is a character flaw with Josh Simmons, it sounds like he's maybe not as bought in as he should be. So we'll go with that storyline as well in the war room for the Texans. So
Sure.
go ahead.
I like it. Yeah. Los Angeles Rams. I think the way I should have been approaching this whole time is like look at the team like I'm a puppet master, right? And I'm like pulling the strings, and I need to look at like what do I think the direction should be. If I'm the Los Angeles Rams and I'm looking at the team, I'm taking Josh Simmons. I think I'm just taking tackle here. It's a position of need. He's fallen way too far for me. He's my OT1, as I've already mentioned. Whoever you didn't take there, I was probably going to take. Actually, I take that back. Tyler Brooker, I wasn't going to take there. But there's a few different ways they could go. Linebacker is maybe a fun pick here. Wait, actually, never mind. You took Jalen Walker already.
Yep.
Yeah, so we'll forget about that. DB is an option here, depending on how you feel about these guys. Let me go back and take a look. Azariah Thomas has definitely gotten some first round smoke. Maxwell Harrison definitely got some character concerns there. Trey Amos has been getting a lot of hype for me, but ultimately I think Josh Simmons is the pick. Best tackle in the class, and I think that he goes to a spot where he is much needed on that offensive line.
Totally fair. Yep. I was just taking a quick peek at the Ravens interior offensive line. I was having a hard time remembering exactly who's there. They've got Ben Cleveland in the
Linderbaum
backup
in the
spot.
middle.
They've got Linderbaum at center. They've got Daniel Fali. Apologies if I mispronounced that.
The Minnesota Cat, yeah.
And they got Andrew Voorhees. So they could maybe look to improve that interior offensive line. I think that could make sense. I was thinking maybe Nick Emenworry here potentially as a landing spot there. That'd be a crazy, freaky secondary there with or like back into the secondary with Emenworry and what's his face, Kyle Hamilton.
Yeah.
So that could be interesting. But we are going to go ahead and go Gray Zabel here. Let's just keep, again, building up the interior offensive line. Add another guy who obviously held up really well at the Senior Bowl, like we already talked about. So this is where I would ultimately go, I believe.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I've talked about it with the Patriots early in the draft, but like protecting your assets should, if you have an elite quarterback, which obviously the Ravens have, arguably one of the best, top three, you need to do whatever you can to protect him, and if that means taking somebody to where it's not a need now but could be in a year, let's take Gray Zabel and see what happens. Like let's just keep him upright, and that's ultimately the goal with them, with your thought process, at least I'm thinking. So that makes sense to me. Lions have to go defense. I mean, they have to go somewhere on the defense, probably the defensive line. Tyreek Williams is someone who blew me away at the combine. I loved his movement skills. I think that the Lions are in a position, as with are these last five teams, to take somebody who's more polished, like just to take like a maybe less upside, but let's just take a guy who's going to go out there and we know what he's going to do. And Nick Scorton feels like that guy for me. So I'm kind of deciding right now between Tyreek and Nick Scorton. I know they had a few of their guys they had signed on that interior defensive line get banged up, who were big free agents last year. So that's going to lead me to go Nick Scorton here, opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, kind of a rotational pass rusher. He's got some three-down capability. So Nick Scorton's the pick. He's the most polished of the guys left to me.
Yeah, I like that. This is an interesting spot on the board because really this whole range, and again, we've talked about this off camera, this is going to be an interesting draft because there are a lot of guys I feel like who are very similarly graded from like the 20 to like 50 range. So it's kind of in a way like just pick your flavor type of thing because there really it probably is going to be some discrepancy just based on what team has a guy maybe slightly higher than another, and they're probably similarly graded. So I don't think anybody knows really at all where a lot of these guys are going to go. But again, maybe that's for a predictive mock draft. This is what we would do. So all that to say, though, I guess that kind of leads into this. So we're looking at the board here. Most of my interior offensive linemen are gone that I would pick at this spot. You know what? There's a guy I'm going to go with here. This has not been a landing spot that we've seen a lot of. We're going to go Amarian Hampton, running back to the Washington Commanders. He's number 22 player on my board, a guy that I think would be, comfortably, like teams would be comfortable with him being RB1 in the draft if it weren't for Ashton Genty. So this is a guy that I think you could slide in there. You got an aging Austin Eckler, no other like major running threat, I would say. And again, like pair that up with Jaden Daniels in that backfield, I think that could be potentially scary. So I again kind of fell into that player for this team, and I actually like it a lot.
Yeah, I was actually, as you were picking him, I was looking, I was like, we have a Marion Hampton still there. I wonder if he has any spot. But um, obviously, Bills have backs, and then Eagles have backs who are my selections. So there's nowhere for me to take him, but I'm glad you took him there because that makes the most sense to me, at least, as well. Buffalo Bills. Could be an offensive line spot here. Definitely could be an offensive line spot. Edge is also a possibility. I'm not super high on James Pierce. I totally get why people like him. It's just not for me just yet. I say that with a month left in the draft. If it's not, it's probably not. Corner here is an interesting thought. You know what? I do quite like corner. I know they just re-signed his name, bro. His name.
I'm not gonna remember this one either, but they did just re-sign him. Yeah,
dude. Why he wears like number 47? There's only like one of them in the entire NFL. I can't remember his name. But anyways, they did re-sign corner. You know what? I am gonna go corner. I'm gonna go Benjamin Morrison here. Get you an outside guy. This is your boundary corner. This is your guy that you trust. So we're just gonna go Benjamin Morrison. Position of need. That's it.
Yep. Christian Benford is the
Christian Benford. Thank you. Yeah.
Is the corner for the Bills. So yeah, no, the 4-year, $76 million deal. You know, pretty fair, I would say, for him. They did a lot of extensions of their own players this offseason, which again is what you want to do. Ultimately, get to a spot where you can extend your own guys and not have to bring in outside guys from the market and things like that.
Yeah.
Here with the Kansas City Chiefs, another team that, to make the point that you talked about here with the Baltimore Ravens, you want to keep Patrick Mahomes upright. That was very clearly one of the major issues that they ran into in the Super Bowl. So I think O-line is easy. For me, next guy on my board here on the offensive line is Kelvin Banks Jr. You know, he's a tough evaluation for me. I'm not exactly sure how exactly I feel about him, but he is currently the 31st player on my board. He goes at spot 31, coincidentally here. And I think, again, let's just keep building that offensive line for the Chiefs. I think it's kind of weird that a team this good has such a glaring need, and one that's as important as offensive line too. So I think it actually makes it kind of easy for the Chiefs at this point. I would be comfortable with Josh Connerly Jr. here too.
Yeah. I'm just because it's on my mind, I'm going to say it real quick. I think offensive line is the hardest position to evaluate in all of the NFL. Like when I'm watching players, like I have such a hard time because I'm no offensive line savant. I don't know exactly the technicalities, the ins and outs. I do a little bit, but not enough to, really separate these guys on a small scale. But because the only things you can really look for is like your athleticism. Do you anchor well? Your physicals, your measurables. Like there's only so many things you can look for with offensive linemen. At least it feels like. I know it's way more in depth than that. And I'm getting off on a little bit of a tangent here, but all that to say, I think Kelvin Banks is someone that I have to revisit his tape. But I think it's a good pick, and I think that they need offensive line desperately. So it makes the most sense to me.
I'm also just real quick. I'm also not sold on the Jalen Moore signing either for them. To play left tackle, a guy who's not had a ton of reps, also not a true tackle either for the most part. So I think tackle makes a ton of sense here.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great insertion there. With the final pick of the first round and our what we would do draft, Eagles, bro. Like James Pierce is here. Like why not just keep reloading the defensive line? Like it feels like something that happens all the time, and unless there's a guy I like more. He's my top-rated edge rusher at this point.
Mine too.
I think I just have to take him. I think that the revolving door they have there at edge, like let's just keep making edge awesome. So, and it wouldn't surprise me if this turns into the best player in NFL history. So that's usually what happens with Howie.
Exactly. No, that was the next guy on my board as well. I'd be interested off the top. I know you're not looking at your board right now. There was only one player left off of my top 32 that we did not pick, and that is Jalen Royals, a guy who's definitely not going to go in the first round. But other than that, we picked everybody else in my top 32. Because we went Kenneth Graham. Yep. Everybody in my top 32. Off the top of your head, anybody that you know of got left off in your top 32?
I mean,
Or
I took Morrison. Morrison would be like the only one that I left off. Top 32. You know what? I think Caleb Johnson, running back out of Iowa, is my number 33. So I think that he just missed the cut. Who is someone who I'm pretty high on as like a one cut back. Um, I don't
did we
know if
take
there's.
Tyler Warren?
We did, yeah. I took Tyler Warren at
Oh,
20
you did.
here.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. I'm sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
I don't know if there's anybody I left off. I know there's different things that I maybe. I mean, that's the thing is there's so many options. It just depends on the avenue you want to take. I kind of elaborated here on Membo, like let's keep our guy upright. But I think there's conversations for someone like Starks anywhere in here, like even at this 8 spot. Um, but yeah, no, I think there's definitely somebody who's in my top 32 who I'm missing in our first round, but it doesn't really matter either way. This is what we would do if we were drafting. So, you got any final thoughts? Anything you want to say?
I would just say real quick, my favorite pick of yours, I would say, is going to be the Colson Loveland pick to the Seahawks. One that I already talked about when you made the pick, so I don't need to say anything else there. But just wanted to shout out my favorite pick of yours in this. So
That's very kind of you. I appreciate that. And my favorite pick of yours. This is a fun game. I like doing this at the end of our mocks. I think Barron here at 13. I'm Barron is my number 3 corner. Yeah, he's my number 3 corner in a different tier than Will Johnson and Travis Hunter. So, number 3 corner going off right here for me, and I think the best scheme fit for him. So, Jade Barron's my favorite pick of yours. I know I said that as well whenever you made that selection, but yeah,
yeah.
that's all we got. Graham, if you want to sign us off, I don't know if we got any other videos planned, but I'll let you do the honors.
Yeah, we will be going over short in the next little bit here. Team needs to address in the draft for each team. So, positions that, we already talked about it a few times throughout our mock drafts, but put pen to paper there. What after free agency dust is settled, what are some additional needs to fit specifically in the draft? Because, there's still a free agency period after the draft that you can maybe plug in a few small holes there. So that'll be on the horizon, as you alluded to, maybe going back over our final big board rankings. And again, we kind of have a preview of that with this mock draft as well. But yeah, that's kind of what's on the horizon. And of course, the actual draft is coming up. So we'll be looking forward to that. And then, of course, grading all the first round picks after the draft. And then, of course, we'll be going over the overall grade for each team on the draft once the draft is officially over, of course. So yeah, definitely a few things on the horizon. And then we'll be able to kind of turn the page on our draft content and then go into more like actual NFL content like we, are usually more keen on anyways. But it's fun to talk about the draft when it's January to April. So
Yeah.
it's been fun so far.
Cool.
But that's about it. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to sign us off here. So with all that being said, we'll look forward to talking to you in the next video. See you guys on the next one.
See you guys. Peace.